The Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Paul Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Our current railway system is simply not fit for purpose. I know I speak for everyone in this chamber when I say that has to change. If we're serious about growth, we have to get serious about rail. After years of Tory neglect, we must get our network back on track and put the passenger first. Across the world, there are examples of both publicly and privately owned train companies that do exactly that. We consequently need not be ideological about ownership, but rather take a pragmatic approach. That is why the Lib Dems have been and remain agnostic about the ownership model adopted. As the government has admitted itself, nationalisation is not a silver bullet and will not automatically deliver cheaper fares, nor a more reliable and frequent service, nor a better passenger experience. So whilst nationalisation might offer economies of scale, it comes with new dangers. And those of us in this chamber old enough to remember the travails of travelling on British rail are unlikely to become misty-eyed at the prospect of going back to that future, although we might well shed a tear. In short, nationalisation alone will not fix the mess the government inherited from the Conservatives. The devil, as so often, is in the detail, and I eagerly await publication of the forthcoming Rail Reform Bill, which we will scrutinise keenly to ensure it does not succumb to the same demons that have held back rail in this country for decades, whether in public or private hands. Turning to the First Amendment, Madam Deputy Speaker. Throughout my party's scrutiny of this bill, we've been asking one simple question: will it improve passenger outcomes? As the Secretary of State has often argued, that is what nationalisation is meant to achieve, and why she rightly describes herself as passenger-in-chief. This First Amendment is consequently important. It makes clear the primary purpose, not the only purpose, but the primary purpose of the bill is to improve passenger railway services, and requires any decision by the Secretary of State to have regard to that purpose when using powers under the bill. I do not therefore understand why the passenger-in-chief does not want this commitment enshrined in the legislation. A statement of the bill's primary purpose would not add any significant costs, nor place extra demands on the Secretary of State, nor would it impose any new burdens on Great British Railways. It would, however, provide a foundation on which her decisions might build, acting as a guiding principle for whenever the Secretary of State uses powers under the bill. As my honourable friend in the other place argued, requiring her to, at every turn, improve passenger standards should not be controversial and is surely not something with which she disagrees. I am consequently surprised the Secretary of State is seeking to excise the statement from the bill. I urge members from across the House to vote against the government's motion to remove. Turning to the Second Amendment, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Second Amendment requires the Secretary of State to rank existing franchise agreements based on performance, nationalising franchises in that order, starting from the worst. But in each case, only if the Secretary of State is satisfied performance will be improved by so doing. Now, there is some logic to such an approach, as relying simply on when the current franchises are due to end results in some of the best performing franchises being nationalised first and some of the worst last, which is why we originally proposed this amendment, which has now been put forward in its entirety by the Conservatives. Now, imitation is, of course, the sincerest form of flattery, and I am duly touched by their actions. I only wish they'd taken the same approach to Brexit. However, following discussions and reassurances from the Minister in the other place, we now believe the wording is too inflexible and the cost of implementing it is too high, and thus are unable to support the amendment. We do, however, continue to share some of our Conservative colleagues' concerns and ask the Secretary of State to, where appropriate, consider using the powers in this bill to extend the franchises of those franchisees performing well, as mentioned by my colleague. For if a franchise is doing well, the government should not rush to fix something that is not broken, but prioritise nationalising those franchises performing poorly. Turning to the Third Amendment, Madam Deputy Speaker. This would make the public sector equality duty apply to a publicly owned railway provider. This is very welcome, and I am pleased the government put forward this amendment after pressure from my Lib Dem colleagues and others in the other place. I know we were all shocked by Baroness Gray-Thompson's account of being forced to crawl off a train this summer. Nobody should be compelled to do this in 2024. It's appalling. It's a constant reality for many. Currently, only 1 in 4 mainline train stations have step-free access. About 40% of rail stations have no tactile paving. This makes our public transport difficult, if not impossible, for many living with disabilities to use. This is simply not good enough. Public transport should be accessible to all. Everyone in society should benefit from the improvements and services we all hope to see. And ensuring the public sector equality duty applies to nationalised rail services is a step in the right direction. I do, of course, appreciate the government was working under this assumption. However, having it enshrined in the bill will help strengthen this commitment. I consequently welcome the commitments the Minister and the other place made, and I hope to see further proposals for making transport accessible in the upcoming rail reform bill, as much more still needs to be done. I've seen firsthand in my constituency how hard it is currently for local communities to receive funding and support to make train stations more accessible. Local Lib Dems in Wimbledon campaigned for a decade to achieve step-free access at Motspur Park, and I'm delighted to be soon attending its unfurling. However, this should not have taken a decade to achieve. We have likewise been waiting for many years for Rains Park and Hayden's Road to be made step-free, and are continuing our campaign. I know the Secretary of State takes this seriously and look forward to hearing her plans to revive the Access for All programme, which I know she and her department are currently working on. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.